All right, everybody, please join me in welcoming Elizabeth Lyons, a distinguished career coach renowned for her transformative impact on clients' careers and a three-time best-selling author. Her groundbreaking work includes I Quit, Working for You Isn't Working for Me, and Hear Us Roar. Let's give a warm welcome to Elizabeth.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Give me one sec. I'm going to share my screen here. I'm going to go off camera, so I got plenty of bandwidth for this. All right. Look good?
Looks great.
Okay. I'm going to jump right in here. So thanks everybody for being here for this Lunch and Learn. I'm really excited to support Women Who Code. I think you're a great group of women. I think this is definitely the platform to educate ourselves and become very powerful in our workplaces. So I'm going to jump right in. Today, we're going to talk about job search trends for 2024. But really, what I want to cover is the economy and the job market, because the more you understand the economy and what happens, then you really understand what you're starting to see in your job search. So, for example, if it's a very robust bull market, typically lots of hiring, higher salaries. If it's more of a bear market or we're starting to slide into recession, you'll find more interviews, more people in your interviews, slower times to offer. So really understanding what's driving your job search can actually help you relax a little bit, because then you're not taking it so personal, thinking that there's something wrong with you or your candidacy. Often it's not all you. There's other things that are feeding into landing a position quickly, or maybe not landing a position as quickly. What I've been reading the last couple of weeks leading up to this presentation was that in the development space, lots of people doing lots and lots of interviews and fewer landings. Definitely seeing some layoffs in and around, but there's hope, and we'll discuss that in this presentation as well. So what we're going to talk about is the economic outlook for jobs in 2024. This is a presentation I do every year and do a roadshow on it because it changes every year. And people find this information pretty interesting when we get into the basics of economic stuff. We'll talk about recession or no recession. We've been talking about recession or no recession for about close to 2 years. Every time Jamie Dimon says something, we're having recession, we're not having recession, we're going to have a soft landing. No, we're not going to have a soft landing. The stock market goes crazy and reacts to all that. So that's become highly problematic. And I'm going to talk about what's driving all that. We'll talk about the job search trends, resume trends, what's hot, what's not, how you want your resume to look. Believe it or not, there's trends in that. Just like your clothing changes year to year, or your hairstyle, or your hair color, there is actually resume trends, and we'll talk about that. And then I'll give you some tools that will equip you in the job search as well. So my name's Elizabeth Lyons. Some of you I know, some of you I don't know. I am a career coach and a leadership coach. I've had my own practice for well over 20 years before there were coaches, believe it or not. I've done this so long that the first book that I published was not on Amazon because Amazon didn't have that capability. I actually went through a small publisher years ago when I wrote my first book in 2009 called Recession Proof Yourself. So I've done this a long time. Now, today, there are thousands of coaches out there. And so I always like to touch on what makes me a little bit different. The biggest thing that makes me different is I've been in talent acquisition within cybersecurity for well over 10 years, and in talent acquisition in general over 20 years. So what makes me different in terms of coaching is every day, all day long, I'm talking to vice presidents, directors, and senior managers and choosing candidate slates, recommending people into those candidate slates, and then hearing about offer details. And so I'm sitting on the front lines of employment, and I can literally tell somebody why they're hired, fired, or promoted before they know it. So that makes me a very different coach. And then I've got a really keen eye on the stock market and also with the economy, which makes me very different than some of my other peers in recruiting. So we're going to dive right into it. You know, the big question has been looming is like, will there be a recession? Will there be a soft landing? And interestingly enough, no one agrees on this. And I found that to be very confusing about 2 years ago, because in all the years of my career, I watched whether a recession was coming or not. In my line of work, on my desk, if there's a recession, there's a plethora of A-player phenomenal candidates that will spill into the market. And then they get recycled over time into great companies. It's also a time where companies absolutely fail and go bankrupt, and new mergers happen and new companies are created. So it 100% impacts my job and my ability to find and deliver top talent. So I watch the market very carefully. And it's interesting to me. I've always found it very interesting. So when I started years ago, there was a couple of sources that I always read and I could hang my hat on. And one of them was Goldman Sachs. They would come out with a yearly report and they could literally predict the recession right down to the season. And so I would watch that and it always came true. The second thing I always watched was Jamie Dimon. Once in a while, he would have some commentary on the economy. And between that and Goldman Sachs, I could predict if we were going to hit recession or not. In my coaching business, then I could advise clients whether they should make a job move or not, what industries were up or down. And I could really, highly advise at a pretty accurate level my clients that came through my coaching business. So about 2 years ago, it all changed and I could not figure out what was going on, because they were not clear on what was happening. So I literally pulled this report and put this slide together because you can see these are top forecasters on the economy, and none of them agree whether we'll have a recession within the next 12 months. The percentile is like the probability of the recession. And you can see Goldman Sachs does not agree with Bank of America, does not agree with CEOs. And so let's back up and look at the total picture. This is why you'll apply for a position. You'll be 90 days into your search on that one position and they'll cancel the rec, because the CEOs all of a sudden get nervous and start pulling positions, or they read something in the news or whatever. Then you've got, the inflation is an issue right now. The Fed's cutting the rates over and over again. That's making it all squirrely. But when I looked at economists, the one thing that they said consistently was this was the first time in 50 years the economic stock market did not follow the typical patterns in the modeling. It did not do it. So there wasn't any way to predict that. Now, this is my own personal commentary. Could that be because of the pandemic and what happened? Yeah, maybe. Could that be because, you had Robinhood and day traders get in there and really skew some of the market? Maybe. It's hard to say, but what caused that? But in 50 years of our economy, and it's built on buying and consuming goods, it's built on recession and bull markets, we can't predict it. And that, to me, frankly, is a little bit alarming. So the long and short of it is, we don't know. What we can see is companies are, it seems to be, pulling back a little bit more. When we look at this unemployment, I pulled these numbers in January and they're definitely up. The national unemployment is actually up. The Dallas unemployment is up a little bit. Texas unemployment as the state is down. So then they had predicted that this would change. But I will tell you, having come through 2008 and 2011, this is pretty low unemployment. So even if you are laid off and it doesn't feel real great, these numbers are still pretty strong, robust economy. That's pretty still low unemployment, which means there would be vacancies and openings out there. I just thought of something as I was talking. The individual we have from Canada, please keep in mind that these are American stock market models. I'm talking about the American economy. It is not going to apply to you whatsoever. So just keep that in mind and just keep this for information gathering only, because I can't comment on that. And that's a completely different ball of wax than our economy here. So what I started to wonder was, what's going on in the market, right? What are the CEOs thinking? Because what you find, whether it's big time CEO like a Jamie Dimon, or you look at the tech companies, the Apples, the Googles, those kinds of companies, or you look into fintech or healthcare, they all kind of make some consensus. They watch the economy actually, and then they kind of will air their headcount and their decision making factor on that for the good of their business. That's not uncommon. Sometimes they start to make moves and it impacts our economy. Or the economy cools off and then they some of the smaller mid-sized companies, they start to follow suit quickly. But I've also seen and heard behind the scenes is those mid-sized companies will actually sit and wait and see what the big companies are doing. Again, your JP Morgan, your Google, your Apple, your Microsoft, your big companies, they will actually rock back and see what those other companies are doing and then make their own kind of plan in terms of hiring. So this is interesting. Klarna's CEO, he was really looking at AI, and he was really saying, let's see how this whole thing plays out with AI, because if we do automate people and jobs, maybe I don't need as much headcount. And I thought that was an interesting thing. And I started to see that play out behind the scenes, especially in some of the development positions, some of the DevOps positions. You're seeing them light up on the board and then fall off very quickly. So there seems to be some indecisiveness around those roles. And what he said was actually what a lot of them are thinking, like, let's wait and see how this thing shakes out. Randstad came out with a report on the global employment landscape. We all know that Randstad is a very large recruitment firm. And they said that with a staggering 96%, organizations are already implementing some forms of downsizing the last year. So and again, not to alarm you, what typically happens there when they're downsizing is then they backfill with contractors. The skill sets may change a little bit. And I think that's the looming question as we're looking at automation and AI and all this other stuff, is like, where is that going to land and what is that going to look like? In terms of wage growth, and again, when you're thinking about the job market and maybe you're out there and you want to negotiate for your next salary, what they're seeing is that it's slightly down the beginning of 2023. So really what I'm saying here and what we're seeing is the days of the pandemic and then paying 30 to 50% more for the skill set is over. So, but what we're seeing is whatever number that was locked in is really where it's out at, because inflation has kind of driven costs up. So companies are still paying what they paid in the pandemic because they really don't know what the skill set is worth right now, to be very transparent with you. But they're not going to go down from that number either because of the inflation and just what it costs. Now we're back in the office. Well, employees, going in 2 or 3 days a week, they got gas, they got tolls, they got, dry cleaning maybe they have to do to be ready, office ready and what have you. So, what I would say is if you're in a negotiation, you're probably going to be at a lateral from where you left and not these huge increases that we have seen. It'll continue to slow through this year is what we're finding. The job openings fell significantly down from in early 2022. So we are seeing that now. I'm talking to you in March. I wrote this presentation like December, January, and started doing my roadshow with it. We're in the end of March. We're almost in April. So we're definitely all seeing and feeling that the job openings are a little bit thinner. By industry, when you look at industry, again, think of your job search. Where am I applying? What industries are hot? What's not? Healthcare and leisure are definitely cooling off. Government, it slowed in December, but it's starting to show job gains. So think about, military and government kinds of jobs where they might need your skill set. Construction and real estate employment growth in these industries continues to trend up. Although we maintain the increase that we saw the second half of 2023 will be short-lived. So we're in 2024. Again, that's kind of showing a little bit more flat. Retail and transportation growth is kind of stagnated and fallen. Part of that is inflation, right? I mean, years ago I would go to Target and blow $50 or $75. I'm not doing that anymore. My food prices are crazy, and it's just my husband and I. The budget is significant for food in my household, and there's only two of us. What I did find, pro tip here, what I did find is if you're not buying processed food, you're probably up 30%. But if you're buying, power bars or processed food, boxes of cereal, this and that, it can be like a 60% increase different in your grocery bill here in Dallas. So it's interesting where people are spending and where they're not spending anymore. It seems to be a little bit flat. In terms of job search trends, there's still this constant discussion on LinkedIn about return to the office and, the real estate, what's going to happen with the empty buildings. This second bullet is something to watch because they just kind of keep kicking the can every month on the books, so that this doesn't fall apart. But it's an issue when you've got big buildings in New York, San Francisco, on 42nd Street and downtown and so forth, then they're just empty. That's problematic. There's been companies that have just decided to pull, smaller companies decided to pull everybody online and work from home, and they vacated those businesses. That's never happened in the history of our country. So to be honest, my commentary here is we're still in an evolutionary process. When I've talked to friends in big companies that work for Amazon or JP or, B of A, and when I say, hey, what's your back to the office policy? They go, we go in 3 days a week. We can pick whatever days we want. We can pick whatever hours we want. Sometimes I'm in 3/4 of the day. Sometimes I pop in for 2 hours in the meeting. They ran a report. The buildings are still not full 4 days a week or 3 days a week or 5 days a week. So I think we're still in an evolutionary process, but the real issue is then what do we do with all these big buildings? And New York City has found that they cannot convert them into apartments because there's all these code violations. So that's problematic. So it'll be interesting to see how this goes. And also, what does it mean for tech, right? And what does it mean for development? Do certain skill sets, stay more remote than others? And kind of how does that look? This is the other big piece where, I would say caution warning, grab some popcorn, rock back and see where this goes. There's a lot of discussion about AI into recruiting, and there's a lot of discussion around automation and AI into development and what ultimately that's going to look like. The general consensus is the jobs will change, but they don't know how they're going to change. And that's going to be interesting to see how that turns out. One of the examples I give whenever I am on these presentations is in talent acquisition. I'm wondering if there comes a day where I log in and AI literally hands me the slate of diverse candidates and says, Elizabeth, you have to call these 10 people, and I'm forced into it. How much my job is going to be discernment and or even talking to people, right? Getting out there, shaking hands. And then I say, hey, apply to this role. But AI has come in and kind of forced some of this decision-making process for me. Or what I'm hoping is that it's augmented into our process, meaning, a person like myself still gets to help advise and pull in great talent that may or may not be online or might be a passive candidate or what have you. So in terms of recruiting, this is kind of different. There is discussion about how that will look. Will AI be embedded into systems? I can tell you that about 6 years ago in Workday, there was a special product that they could buy called Phenom. And Phenom actually just laid over top of Workday. And it was fantastic. When I got in there, it was a search engine on the left-hand side, but very, very detailed. I could say, find me a candidate within 5 miles of the city, these 5 things. And you just keep refining it. Before you know it, I might have tens of thousands in a database in a large company, and it's going to boil it down to 200. And then I can boil it down to 50, and then I can get it down to like 10. I remember I had a role years ago with Snowflake as a hard requirement, and even the hiring manager was like, "You're never going to find it." Well, I found 5 people, but it took me a little bit. But without the help of Phenom, I wouldn't have found them at all. Not all companies are running that, but I just remember that tool, and it was definitely AI laid on top of it for an easy, way to search and crunch the data. DEI is definitely waning. There's no doubt about that. And to be honest, I'm not that alarmed because there's a lot of grass movement groups. Ours is one of them that is really advocating for women and people of color in the tech space, in banking and financial, in lots of different industries. So even though this is waning a bit, I think ultimately, I think we're still again in the thrust of major evolution and everything changing in a positive way. Pay transparency is going to be a big one. You're going to see more of that posted on physical recs, in terms of what positions pay. We're definitely seeing this. I mean, I wrote this back in January, but we're definitely seeing it's more of an employer-driven market, but there's definitely some flexibility in terms of returning back to the office in general, I would say. Okay, so I want to switch gears and give you some highlights of resume trends. So if you're out there on the job market, this is what's kind of hot and what's not for this year within resumes. So just something to think about. 2-page resumes are definitely the thing. Recruiters are 70% more likely to prioritize 2-page resumes. To be honest, what you agonize hours and hours over writing, we are going to read and review within 30 to 60 seconds. Your most important stuff should be at the top. If you're not getting calls to interview, something's wrong with the resume, definitely stop sending it and back up. 93% of all resumes include one or more action-oriented phrases. So think about your accomplishments. Think about what makes you different and unique. Really think about if we got to the very back end of the interview and I said to you, I'm going to interview 5 other candidates. Tell me what's great and unique about you that would be different than the other candidates I'm talking to. That stuff should be on the resume, and that's stuff that you want to talk about that's going to separate you in the interview process. Here's a statistic, and I just spoke about it. 1 in 4 hiring managers spends less than 30 seconds looking at the resume after I've looked at it for 30 to 60 seconds. So don't agonize over it, but you got to get it right in the first few seconds. You've got to have it compelling and hit all the high points, that are the qualifications minimally on the rack. Arial I found this interesting. Arial is the most commonly used font. I found that interesting. Job seekers with AI assisted resumes have an 8% likelihood of getting hired. I'd be careful with that. I mean, maybe the thing is, what I always say in these presentations is that doesn't worry me at all because it's going to fall apart rapidly the first 10 minutes of the interview with me. So, if you whiz bang it through AI, believe me, if it's not there, that's going to get real transparent real quick. And we're going to know if your communication isn't right, if you don't have stories to back up your bullet points, if you can't tell me why you left XYZ company and why you want to go into our company. You can AI it all you want, but you still have to interview. So that this doesn't concern me. I don't take much off that resume to be fact. I really like to talk to people and kind of see where they're at to really make a decision to put them forward or not, and in terms of if they're qualified or not. 79% of hiring managers today are willing to hire candidates with career gaps. This is absolutely true. When we got in the pandemic, there was a whole pile of women that returned back to the workforce, actually. There was no talent pool during the pandemic. And so this was interesting. We definitely don't care about that. That whole job hopper mentality has kind of gone out the window. I don't find the executives that I work with ever question me on that. They're never saying, well, why did she leave this job and then go to this job and she was there 2 years? We don't have those conversations anymore. They're really looking at brass tacks and just skill sets overall. So to summarize, we don't know about recession this year. I mean, that's just like the bottom line. We don't know what this is going to look like. This is, I researched before I got online with all of you today, and this is a fact. They're going to cut those rates 3 times in 2024. what that looks like, I'm not sure what that's going to do to the market. I know that they're getting careful now because they don't want to break the system. Nobody wants the system broke. Trust me on that. Inflammation. It is like inflammation, actually. Inflation will remain. They're not seeing any slowdown on that. So I don't know, that's tough. They said it was gotten better. I'll tell you personally, I don't see any difference, at the gas pump or my food bills or my energy bills. I don't know who's getting this great inflation has moved down a little bit because I'm not seeing it at all. If you are looking, like, let's say you are working and you are confidentially about to make a move, I would not say don't do it. I would definitely not say that. I would say be cautious and be strategic. And what I mean by strategic is, what industry are you going into? Are they growing? What are they doing with your skill set? Right? Is any of that likely to be automated? Um, are they adding to their team? Is this a replace? I mean, I would just be strategic in apply, right? But these are the questions that you're going to need to vet and figure out talking to them, and then also looking online as well. Chat GPT and other AI systems definitely going to make their market recruiting and for the job seekers. Many of you on the call may have seen my presentation on Chat GPT and the job search. I know we've got it recorded on our site. So that's definitely starting to come about. And then the last thing I would leave you with is just very easy to read resumes are key. So my last slide here is around coaching. And what they find is, many, many years, like 20, 30 years, executive men got to be executive men because, believe it or not, they had coaches along the way, like way back when they were getting into management or they had their first team. It's not uncommon. And what you find with women is this is a foreign thought to actually hire a coach. What women tend to do is get more certifications, maybe get more education. They'll actually spend a lot of money on their appearance, thinking that their physical appearance in the office will make a difference and that it'll change perception, and then therefore they will get the promotion. It doesn't work like that, and so what I always say to women is don't go it alone. If you're having a career crisis, reach out, vet your coach, make sure that he or she's going to help you. Be clear on what you want in your development. I've worked with women that were managers and wanted to get to director level and were passed over time and time again. I've worked with women that had very serious political issues at work, and in 30 days we were able to clean them up and they didn't get fired. I've had all kinds of clients over the years, but what I would say is coaching is an investment, and it might be worth looking at. There's a point where your family support or your girlfriend support or even your peer support isn't really not enough to make you happy and successful in your career. And this might be worth considering. And then this is like, how do I know if I need a coach? Well, these are some good things, right? You have an updated resume or LinkedIn. You want some direction, you need some compass, but this is the big one. Like, you're running from your job versus running to a new opportunity. So think about that. And, if you want to consider coaching, or let's say you just have a question about your resume, like, is my resume going to work? Or what is my skill set worth? To any of the members within Dallas Women That Code, I always offer 15-minute consultation call. I'm more than happy to answer a couple of your questions and point you some good directions. And then, if you want to look at the coaching, great. But I really don't care. If you just have some questions and you're confused, you're more than welcome to leverage my expertise in this area. This is my contact information. If you want to reach out to me, you're more than welcome. Email is really good. I also definitely invite you to join me on LinkedIn. We've got some great people on LinkedIn. I've joined 2 or 3 more groups this year that I'll be active with. My posts are work-related, economy-related, leadership-related, and then I always give shout-outs to our group about people that are speaking or, just events that are going on around town. So definitely invite you to join me on LinkedIn, and then my site is lionsology.com. And that wraps it up for me at this point.
Yes, Elizabeth, that was great. We do have several questions I want to start with the questions in the chat, I guess in the order we received them, Rachel. It looks like the first question was around resume trends. Are the resume trends you presented for all sectors or only in tech?
All sectors. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Also, someone mentioned they were taught to keep their resume one page. Is there a reason why 2 pages is better?
Well, two things. You want to think about your competition. I mean, most of the resumes I read in tech, they're 3+ pages. I usually don't read all 3+ pages. One is not enough to really tell me what's going on. You probably cut it too short. So 2 pages is about the right cadence. If you can get it into 2, that's a little bit better. I'll tell you from these tech resumes, probably about 6, 7, 8 years ago, longer tech resumes were great and we spent some time really reading. But I mean, think about yourself. You don't read. I mean, you read 140 characters at best on a tweet. Like, so now you want us to like sit here for 8 pages of like minutia? Like, we're not going to do it. Like, we got to move, man. We got to find candidates, talk to y'all, get y'all packaged, talk to the hiring manager, push them to interview, get the feedback, go back and forth. I mean, it's like a whole thing to get a hire together before I step out and the onboarding starts. So, I mean, really, it's reasonable. 2 pages is enough. You get into 3+, it's more detailed than what we probably need to see. Biggest thing I can tell you, you can write 100 pages. If you haven't told me why you're qualified, then I'm going to decline you out immediately. So go to the rec. What are the qualifications listed? What are the desired listed? If you have the desire, maybe make sure that that's on like page 1 so that I can see very clearly, yeah, you're qualified. That interests me. And then I'll keep reading from them, or I'll just pull you right into the interview.
Next question, Elizabeth. Are the resume trends global or US only data?
As I had said, that everything here is like, it's all US, right? I don't know. And this isn't a deep dive globally. So this is really US market, US resumes, what's happening here. Yeah.
Are the resume trends across industries?
Yes. Yep. The data that I pulled is yes.
Let's see here. Are growing teams riskier to move into for a new job?
Depends. I mean, if you're in develop right now, you're in an extremely hot seat. I mean, I would start looking at pivoting. If you're in development, between the visa issues, the immigration issues, the president that could or could not be, the global migration, the AI. I mean, that I don't care if that team is growing or not. If you're in development, I would start to, broaden those skills, think about what comes next if it all falls apart. So, I mean, it depends what skill set you're looking on. A growing team may or may not be. I had a dear friend call me, Citibank yesterday, 2 days ago, laid off 20,000 people. They're going to lay off 20,000 people within 2 years. She had been with Citi for a number of years. She did a job change 4th quarter of last year, and she woke up 2 days ago and she was out of a job. It was like the air went out of her. And the bottom line was they were not doing the Go For It initiative with that team. And she just found herself on the list. And so it's hard to, and that team was growing, right? It was growing 4th quarter last year. And now, she's one of the city statistics. So you're looking for a rule. If I follow this rule, will I be safe? No, don't look for rules. It's not going to work. It can happen to anybody at any time. It's more about stock, recession, up, down, industry. It's not going to necessarily be in the team.
Elizabeth Carey asked, how hard is it for knowledge workers to get jobs abroad?
I don't know that market. I could not comment on that. Somebody probably in the group could. You could take it offline, but I don't know.
Yeah, I invite everybody to keep the conversation going over in our Slack community. We can share that link with you on our link tree in the chat where you can get lots more questions answered. Um, Stephanie as given resumes are getting a 60-second glance, are cover letters getting looked at?
No, and here's the thing. I really want to put it back on all of you rather than looking at the recruiter and the market and asking pointed questions. I really want to ask why is this so important that we're writing 10 pages? Why is it so important to you that you're writing a cover letter and you have to be seen? It's not necessary. So that's really about you're scared. That's really about you have a lot to say. And this is not it's not like that anymore. So it's just not no more than you read just this, like this is the evolution of what is. We have not looked at cover letters literally in 8 years. Literally. So if you attach it, we don't even read it. If you try to be crafty and you put it at the top of the resume, we scroll all the way past it. There's nothing in the cover letter that you could say that you wouldn't say on the resume. Like if you're like, let's say you're a green card holder or US citizen, that should be at the top of the resume. I don't need that on there. If you're willing to relocate at your own expense, your resume is good. I'm going to call you and we're going to talk about that. You just have this unfulfilled need to talk about why you're a great candidate and dump it in a cover letter. And we're really interested in live conversations. And that's where it's at. So they really haven't read them in like 8 years. I don't even see them anymore attached, honestly.
Well, on a different note, Zen Zen asks, how can we pass ATS?
Well, here it is. I want to stop thinking automatic and code and tech. Be a person. How are you approaching another person? That's what it is, not some technology you're interfacing with. So the first thing you do is you show that you're qualified because there's laws in place. So all this other nonsense isn't necessary, right? It's very simple. It's so simple, you probably won't want to do it. You go to the rec, skip the 5 paragraphs that says what the job is and how great the company is. There's a section, it says qualifications. These are hard stops in the law that if you don't have them, they're not going to invite you in. 5 years of C#, 2 years of application security, API experience, Docker, Kubernetes, and they'll say so many years. Get that up at the top. Make sure that they know. You don't have to put the years, but let them know, like, I have those skills. Then they have desired automation experience, certifications are great, cloud experience, that stuff, get that up at the top. Remember, they're only going to read 30 seconds in. So you have a skill block at the top and you have all that in there. And all the recs are going to be about the same skill set and about the same level of qualifications. If you have that at the top, that's how you get their attention. You're not getting through the ATS. The person behind still runs the ATS. There's a person that clicks on your resume and decides, I'm going to go forward or I'm not going to go forward. So that's where you want to be. And then to have that human component as you're applying, think about it from like you're connecting with a person, believe it or not a platform.
So Elizabeth, we have a clarifying question. Natalie asked, echoing Stacy's question, are you saying software development is going to become obsolete?
Hang on, I'm reading. I don't know about that requiring cover letters, and I've only worked for very large companies in payments, and all my friends are in that. So I don't maybe that's your experience, but it's 100% not mine. What I do see in your area is testing, and it's kind of, it can be very not fun from your perspective. So HackerRank tests, coding tests that they make up, and you feel like all you did was give me your technology problem and ask me to solve it, and talk about unpaid time, serious unpaid time with that. But in terms of cover letters, I have not seen that ever.
We've got about 2 more minutes before we have to wrap up. I want to circle back, Elizabeth. There is a clarifying question around a statement you made with regard to software development. Folks should pivot out of software development. Folks want to know whether or not you think it's going to be obsolete.
When you read the experts, and I'm not in that space, I'm in the cyberspace, but when you read the experts, if you join me on LinkedIn and you go back through old posts, I've actually posted people that were experts in this. They definitely talk about it will change. And the general consensus is the coding itself will be automated through AI. What you'll end up being is a quality control person. And every development person I've talked to the last 3 months, I'm like, that's probably the last thing you want to do. And they're like, yeah, I didn't do all this work and study to be a QA person. So that, like when I've read and tried to educate myself and then talked to people, that's been the consensus. And then the other consensus is if you're an H1, and I know this is a delicate piece here, but if you're on an H1 and you're in a development role or a big data role, that could be a precarious place where companies across the board are not sponsoring, and those could be cut. So it's a weird time. 20 years ago, we could not get the skill set in our country, and it's all changing now, and then AI is speeding it up. So I don't know. I mean, I'm just the kind of person, I would want a plan B. I would minimally be like reading headlines and trying to look at where I can expand my skills in case this changes, or be on the front lines of it's gonna change. What are, do I want to do QA? What else can I do? What would I want to do? That would be my advice there.
All right, guys, it's been awesome time getting insights from Elizabeth. My apologies if we weren't able to address your question right now on this call, but I've shared the link tree in the chat. Please use that to find our Slack channel, where you can go into our career advice channel and continue the conversation with Elizabeth and others. Thank you again today for attending, and be sure to keep connecting with us on social media. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's great.